The doctor once told me, sometimes the human body survives, even when everyone else has already given up. At the time, I couldn't hear him. I couldn't move. I couldn't even open my eyes. But somehow, I heard every word, every lie, every betrayal, and every promise they thought I'd never remember. My name is Emma Parker. 3 years ago, my husband married my younger sister while I was lying in a hospital bed. Everyone believed I would never wake up. They were wrong. 3 years earlier, life couldn't have been more perfect. I had just turned 29. I owned a fast-growing architecture firm in Seattle. It wasn't the biggest company in the city, but it was my dream. I had built it from nothing. Long nights, endless coffee, rejected proposals, and years of hard work. Every brick of that business carried my name. Then there was Daniel, the man I thought I would grow old with. We met at a charity fundraiser 6 years earlier. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He was simply kind. Or at least, that's what I believed. After 2 years of dating, we got married. People called us the perfect couple. They said we completed each other. I believed them, until I learned that appearances can be the biggest lie of all. Then there was my younger sister, Olivia. She had always wanted the life I had. When we were children, she copied everything I did. The same clothes, the same hobbies, the same friends. At first, I thought it was admiration. Later, I realized it was jealousy. Still, she was my sister. I trusted her completely. She had a key to my house. She helped organize company events. She even worked as my personal assistant. I never imagined I was inviting my biggest enemy into my own life. It was our 4th wedding anniversary. Daniel surprised me with dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date. Candles, soft music, a table overlooking the water. Everything felt perfect. Halfway through dinner, he reached across the table and held my hand. "I have a surprise." I smiled. "What is it?" "We're finally taking that trip to Italy." I dreamed about visiting Italy for years. I laughed like a little kid. On the drive home, I couldn't stop talking about it. Daniel just smiled. Looking back, his smile wasn't excitement. It was guilt. The rain started just after midnight. The roads became slippery. Daniel was driving. I remember looking out the window, watching the city lights blur against the glass. Then, a pair of headlights appeared out of nowhere. Too close. Too fast. Daniel shouted my name. The sound of screeching tires echoed through the night. Then, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, or at least, when I became aware of the world again, I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even blink. I heard machines beeping beside me, doctors walking in and out, nurses whispering. Someone said, "She's in a coma." Days passed. Maybe weeks. I had no way of knowing. Then one afternoon, I heard Daniel's voice. He was crying. Or, at least, it sounded like crying. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I never wanted this." For a moment, I believed him. Then another voice entered the room. Olivia. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's over now. You have to move on." Daniel sighed deeply. "I know, but people will judge us." Olivia answered without hesitation. "They'll understand. Everyone believes she's never coming back." My heart pounded. What were they talking about? Move on? I was still alive. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them I could hear every word. But my body refused to obey me. Then Daniel whispered something that shattered my world forever. "I've always loved you. Not Emma. You." There was silence. Then, I heard them kiss. At that moment, I realized the accident wasn't the worst thing that had happened to me. Lying helpless in that hospital bed, listening to my husband confess his love to my own sister, was far more painful than any broken bone. Tears rolled silently from the corners of my eyes. But no one noticed, because everyone believed a woman in a coma couldn't cry. The days blended together. Morning, night, morning again. I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't move a finger, but I could hear everything. Every conversation, Every lie, every secret they thought was buried inside my silence. Daniel visited almost every afternoon. Whenever nurses walked into the room, he became the perfect husband. He held my hand. He pretended to cry. He thanked the doctors for never giving up. Everyone admired him. The moment we were alone, his voice changed. Cold. Emotionless. I'm tired of pretending, Emma. I can't spend the rest of my life waiting for someone who may never wake up. I wanted to scream. I was still here. I was fighting, but no sound came out. A few minutes later, Olivia walked into the room. She closed the door behind her. Did the lawyer call? Daniel nodded. Yes. He said that because we're legally married, I can temporarily manage Emma's business. Olivia smiled. And what about her shares? We're working on it. I felt my heart racing. My company, the business I had spent years building, they weren't worried about me. They were planning to take everything I owned. The following week, I heard another familiar voice. It was my father. He sounded exhausted. Daniel. How's she doing? Daniel sighed. The doctors don't have much hope. My mother began crying. I can't believe this happened. Then Daniel said exactly what he wanted them to hear. I promised Emma I'd protect everything she built. I'll take care of the company until she comes back. If she comes back. He never said those words, but everyone heard them. My father placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. We trust you. Emma always trusted you. I wanted to beg them not to believe him, but I remained trapped inside my own body, listening, unable to stop what was happening. Days turned into months. My office, my employees, my dreams were no longer under my control. Daniel appointed himself acting CEO. Olivia became his executive assistant. Together, they began replacing the people who had been loyal to me. One by one, my oldest employees disappeared. Some resigned. Others were fired. The company I had built was slowly becoming theirs. One afternoon, a nurse entered my room with a young doctor. I still think she's responding, the doctor said. The nurse looked confused. Her brain scans haven't changed. I know. But yesterday, I asked her to imagine squeezing my hand. I could have sworn one of her fingers moved. Hope filled my heart. Finally, someone noticed. The doctor walked closer to my bed. Emma, if you can hear me, keep fighting. I believe you're still in there. For the first time in months, someone believed I hadn't disappeared. As he turned to leave, the door suddenly opened. Daniel stepped inside. The young doctor smiled politely. I think your wife may be showing small signs of awareness. Before Daniel could answer, Olivia interrupted. Doctor, we've heard that before. We don't want false hope. The doctor looked uncertain. I understand, but I'd like to continue running additional tests. Daniel forced a smile. Of course. We appreciate everything you're doing. The doctor left. The door closed. Silence filled the room. Then, Daniel's voice became cold again. This can't happen. Olivia whispered. Calm down. What if she wakes up? Daniel looked directly at my motionless body. Then everything we've planned falls apart. My heart pounded. Everything? What exactly had they planned? Olivia stepped closer. No one thinks she's coming back. We're almost there. Just a little longer. Daniel slowly nodded. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. The wedding has to happen before she wakes up. Wedding? What wedding? I wanted to open my eyes. I wanted to move. I wanted to stop them. But I couldn't. All I could do was lie there, listening helplessly, as my husband and my own sister planned a future without me. 3 months later, the impossible happened. Daniel married Olivia. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard every detail. The nurses couldn't stop talking about it. Can you believe how fast he moved on? I know, but the poor man has suffered enough. They say Emma will probably never wake up. Their words cut deeper than a knife. Everyone believed Daniel was the victim. No one knew the truth. No one knew that while I was still breathing, my husband was celebrating a new wedding with my own sister. A week later, Daniel and Olivia visited my hospital room together. Olivia was still wearing her wedding ring. She stood beside my bed and smiled. You always wanted a big family, Emma. Well, I guess I'll take care of your husband now. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Olivia. She laughed. What? She can't hear us. Then she leaned closer to my ear. Thank you for everything. Your company, your house. And now, your husband. If you ever wake up, I hope you enjoy seeing our wedding photos. They both laughed. Tears rolled down my face. But neither of them noticed.
To them,
I was nothing more than a body connected to machines. Months passed. The seasons changed. Snow turned into spring. Spring became summer. Inside my silent world, I counted time by the voices around me. Then one afternoon, everything changed. The same young doctor returned. His name was Dr. Nathan Reed. He reviewed my latest brain scans carefully. Then he smiled. This is impossible. One of the nurses looked confused. What is it? Her brain activity has improved. Significantly. The nurse's eyes widened. Do you think she'll wake up? I don't know. But she's fighting. For the first time, hope entered my hospital room. That evening, Dr. Reed asked everyone to leave. He pulled a chair beside my bed. Emma, if you can hear me, you need to keep fighting. I know you're still in there. If you understand me, try to move your index finger. I focused every ounce of strength I had. Nothing. I tried again. Pain shot through my entire body. Then, my finger moved. Just a little.
but it moved.
Dr. Reed froze. A smile slowly spread across his face. I knew it. You heard me. He immediately pressed the emergency call button. Doctors rushed into the room. More tests were ordered. More scans. More examinations. None of them could explain what had happened. But one thing was certain. I wasn't gone anymore. I was coming back. The next morning, Daniel received a phone call from the hospital. He and Olivia arrived less than 20 minutes later. Dr. Reed met them outside my room. We've seen signs of neurological improvement. Daniel forced a smile. That's wonderful news. But the moment the doctor walked away, his expression changed. He grabbed Olivia's arm. This isn't good. She whispered. Maybe it's temporary. What if it isn't? We've worked too hard for this. Daniel looked around to make sure no one was listening. If Emma wakes up, everything belongs to her again. Olivia's face turned pale. There has to be another way. Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he looked through the glass window at me. His eyes were filled with fear. Not because he was afraid of losing me, but because he was afraid of losing everything he had stolen. As they walked away, Dr. Reed watched them from the end of the hallway. Something about their behavior didn't feel right. For the first time, he stopped seeing Daniel as a devoted husband and started seeing him as a man with something to hide. Dr. Nathan Reed couldn't ignore his instincts. For years, he had treated hundreds of coma patients. He knew the difference between genuine concern and carefully rehearsed emotions. Every time Daniel visited, something felt wrong. The smiles, the fake tears, the perfectly timed speeches. It all felt like an act. So Dr. Reed began reviewing my medical file from the beginning. Every report, every scan, every medication. Then, he noticed something unusual. For almost 6 months, someone had repeatedly requested that my rehabilitation therapy be postponed. The requests hadn't come from the hospital. They had been signed by my legal guardian, Daniel. Dr. Reed frowned. Why would a husband delay treatments that could help his wife recover? He immediately ordered new neurological tests. This time, without informing Daniel. A few days later, the results arrived. They were better than anyone expected. My brain activity had improved dramatically. The medical team agreed on one thing. If my progress continued, there was a real chance I could wake up. Dr. Reed smiled. This is the miracle we've been waiting for. But someone else received the same news. Daniel. He stormed into the hospital later that afternoon. What exactly are these new tests? Dr. Reed answered calmly. They show significant improvement. Daniel forced a smile. I appreciate everything you're doing, but don't give the family false hope. This kind of recovery is extremely rare. Dr. Reed looked him straight in the eyes. Rare doesn't mean impossible. Daniel didn't say another word. He simply turned around and left. That night, Daniel and Olivia met inside their luxury apartment. The apartment that had once belonged to me. Olivia poured herself a glass of wine. We're running out of time. Daniel remained silent. If she wakes up, the company is gone. The house is gone. Everything is gone. Daniel slammed his fist against the kitchen counter. I know. The room fell silent. After a few moments, Olivia spoke again. What if we leave? Daniel looked at her. And give up everything?
No.
I didn't spend 3 years building this life. Just to lose it now. Olivia hesitated. Then what do we do? Daniel stared out the window. Then quietly said, we make sure Emma never remembers anything. Olivia's eyes widened. You mean? I mean exactly what I said. The following morning, Dr. Reed entered my room with a small flashlight. Emma, if you can hear me, blink twice. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, slowly, I blinked.
Once. Twice.
Dr. Reed couldn't hide his excitement. He immediately called the nursing station. She's responding. Within minutes, doctors filled the room. More tests followed. By the end of the day, there was no doubt. I was waking up. Late that evening, I finally managed to open my eyes. The bright hospital lights blurred my vision. Everything felt unfamiliar. Dr. Reed smiled warmly. Welcome back, Emma. I tried to speak, but no words came out. He gently reassured me. Don't force yourself. Your body needs time. I nodded weakly. Then, the first memory came rushing back. Daniel, Olivia, their wedding, their betrayal. A tear rolled down my cheek. Dr. Reed noticed immediately. What is it? I slowly whispered my very first word in 3 years. Daniel. Dr. Reed smiled. He's been visiting you for years. I closed my eyes. If only he knew the truth. Because the first person I never wanted to see again was the man everyone believed had never left my side. The first few days were the hardest. My muscles were weak. I couldn't walk. I could barely lift my hand. Even speaking a full sentence left me exhausted. Dr. Reed visited every morning. Your recovery is remarkable, but you need patience. I nodded. There was only one thing I wanted to know. How long? He smiled gently. You were in a coma for almost 3 years. 3 years. 3 birthdays. 3 anniversaries. 3 years of my life.
Gone.
I closed my eyes, trying to accept a reality I had never chosen. Then I asked the question that had been burning inside me. My company? Dr. Reed hesitated. As far as I know, your husband has been managing it. My heart sank. I already knew what that meant. Over the next 2 weeks, I slowly became stronger. I could walk with assistance. I could eat on my own. I could finally hold a conversation. One afternoon, Dr. Reed sat beside my bed. Emma, there's something I need to ask you. I looked at him. When you were unconscious, did you hear anything? For a moment, I stayed silent. Then I answered honestly. I heard everything. His expression changed immediately. Everything. I nodded. The conversations, the lies, the wedding, the plans to take my company. Dr. Reed leaned back in complete disbelief. I've read about patients hearing voices during comas, but I've never met someone who remembered this much. He remained quiet for a long moment. Then he said, if what you're telling me is true, you need to be very careful. That evening, a nurse entered my room. Your husband is here. I looked toward the door. Daniel walked in carrying a bouquet of white lilies, the same flowers he used to buy every anniversary. For a few seconds, he froze. His face turned pale. Emma, you're awake. I forced a weak smile. I guess I surprised everyone. He quickly walked over and hugged me. I've prayed for this day. I never stopped believing. I let him hug me because I wanted to see how far he would go. When he pulled away, there were fake tears in his eyes. I've missed you so much. I looked directly at him. So much. That you married my sister? The color disappeared from his face. He stared at me, unable to speak. Finally, he whispered, "You remember?" I smiled. "More than you think." For the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. He tried to explain. "Emma, it's not what it looks like." I laughed quietly. "I heard everything, Daniel. Every visit, every lie, every kiss." His hands began to shake. "You were in a coma." "I know, but I was listening." The room fell silent. Neither of us spoke.
Then,
He took a step closer. "Please, let me explain." I shook my head.
no.
"You've already said enough." Just then, Dr. Reed walked into the room. Daniel immediately stepped back. The perfect husband returned. He smiled politely. "I'll come back tomorrow." As soon as he left,
Dr. Reed looked at me.
"You planned that?" I nodded. I needed him to know that I know the truth. "What are you going to do now?" I looked out the hospital window. The old Emma would have cried, would have begged for answers. But that woman had disappeared 3 years ago. "I won't fight him." Dr. Reed looked confused. "No." I smiled calmly. "I'm going to let him believe that I've lost everything. And then, I'm going to take it all back." Outside the hospital, Daniel sat inside his car with trembling hands. He immediately called Olivia. His voice was filled with panic. "Emma remembers everything." There was silence on the other end. Then Olivia whispered, "We're in serious trouble." Daniel gripped the steering wheel tightly. "No, we're finished." The moment Daniel ended the call, Olivia rushed home. She found him sitting in the living room, staring at the floor. "Tell me exactly what happened." Daniel ran both hands through his hair. "She remembers everything. The conversations, the wedding, everything." Olivia's face turned pale. "That's impossible. I thought people in comas couldn't hear anything." So did I. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Finally, Olivia broke the silence. "We have to get ahead of this." Daniel looked up. "What do you mean?" "If Emma goes to the police, if she sues us, we'll lose everything." Daniel shook his head. "There isn't enough proof. She only heard us. She can't prove what we said." Olivia forced a smile. "Then we make sure no one believes her." Meanwhile, I was discharged from the hospital. 3 years had changed the world. The streets looked different. Technology had changed. Even the city's skyline wasn't the same. Everything felt unfamiliar. Except one thing.
The pain.
Dr. Reed helped me into a car. "Where will you go?" I looked at him. "Not home. There are too many memories there. I've arranged a private rehabilitation center for a few weeks. No one knows you're staying there." I smiled. "Thank you." Before closing the car door, he handed me a small envelope. "What's this?" "Everything I collected." Inside were copies of my medical records, visitor logs, treatment delays, and every document Daniel had signed while I was unconscious. "You may need these one day." I held the envelope tightly. "I will." 2 weeks later, I was finally strong enough to walk without assistance. I rented a small apartment across town. No luxury, no expensive furniture, just peace. One evening, I turned on the television. A business interview appeared on the screen. The headline read, "Parker Designs announces new CEO vision." Daniel was standing at the podium. Olivia stood proudly beside him. He smiled at the cameras. "My wife, Olivia, and I are committed to taking this company to new heights." My wife. The words echoed in my mind. He was standing in front of the company I had built, calling it his own. I quietly turned off the television. Instead of crying, I opened my laptop. For the first time in 3 years, I logged into my old email account. Hundreds of unread messages filled the screen. Most were old, but one caught my attention. It had been sent almost 3 years earlier, the week after my accident. The sender was Grace Miller, my former chief financial officer. The subject line read, "Urgent. Daniel is hiding something." My hands began to shake. I open the email. Emma, I don't trust Daniel. He's transferring company assets without board approval. I've tried to stop him, but he removed me from my position. If you ever read this, don't trust anyone, especially Olivia. Attached to the email were dozens of financial documents, bank transfers, forged signatures, unauthorized contracts. I stared at the screen in disbelief. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was fraud. Real evidence.
Real crimes.
For the first time since waking up, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I finally had something more powerful than memories. I had proof. And with proof, I could destroy everything they had built on my stolen life. I spent the next several days reading every document Grace had sent me. Every bank transfer, every forged signature, every illegal contract. The deeper I looked, the darker the truth became. Daniel hadn't just stolen my company. He had slowly drained it. Millions of dollars had disappeared. Some had been transferred to shell companies. Others had been used to buy luxury cars, vacation homes, and expensive jewelry. Everything was hidden behind fake consulting firms. Olivia's name appeared on several transactions. She wasn't just Daniel's wife. She was his partner. I knew exactly who I needed to find. Grace Miller, my former chief financial officer. After hours of searching, I found her working at a small architectural firm on the other side of the city. I walked into the office. She looked up from her desk. For a second, she stared at me without moving. Then tears filled her eyes. Emma? I smiled. It's really me. Grace ran toward me and hugged me tightly. I thought I'd never see you again. So did everyone else. We sat in a nearby cafe for hours. She told me everything. After your accident, Daniel fired anyone who questioned him. The board believed every lie he told. I tried to stop him, but he accused me of stealing company funds. My reputation was destroyed overnight. I reached across the table. I'm sorry. She shook her head.
No.
I'm sorry I couldn't protect your company. I smiled softly. You protected something even more important. The truth. Grace opened her laptop. I've kept copies of everything. She showed me hidden financial records, secret board meeting minutes, emails between Daniel and Olivia. Then she opened one final folder. Its name was simple. Accident. I frowned. What's this? Grace took a deep breath. I never had proof, but I always believed your crash wasn't an accident. My heart skipped a beat. She clicked on a video file. It was security footage from a traffic camera. The quality wasn't perfect, but it clearly showed my car. A black SUV followed us for several blocks.
Then,
just seconds before the crash, the SUV suddenly accelerated. It slammed into the side of our car. The impact pushed us directly into the path of the truck. I couldn't breathe. I never saw this. Grace nodded. The footage disappeared from the official investigation. Someone made sure of it. My hands trembled. Who owned the SUV? I've been trying to find out for years. She looked at me seriously. But I recently discovered something. The vehicle was rented. The day before the accident. My voice barely came out. By who? Grace slowly turned the screen toward me. The rental agreement contained one familiar name. Olivia Parker. I stared at the document. Unable to speak. Unable to think. My own sister had rented the vehicle involved in the crash. At that moment, everything changed. This wasn't just a story about betrayal anymore. It was a story about attempted murder. Grace quietly closed the laptop. What are you going to do? I looked out the cafe window. People walked by, laughing, living ordinary lives. Mine had been stolen 3 years ago. I turned back to Grace. We're not going after them with anger. We're going after them with evidence. She smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. 1 week later, we quietly established a new architecture company. No press releases. No public announcements. Just a small office. A handful of loyal employees. And one clear mission. To rebuild everything that had been taken from me. None of them knew that 3 years later, the company they laughed at would become the very place where Daniel and Olivia would one day beg for jobs. 3 years later, everything had changed. The small office Grace and I rented had become the headquarters of one of the fastest-growing architecture firms in the country, Pinnacle Design Group. We started with 5 employees.
Now,
More than 400 people worked for us. Our projects stretched across 3 states: luxury hotels, corporate towers, hospitals, universities. Clients trusted our work. Investors trusted our vision. And for the first time in years, I finally trusted myself again. One Monday morning, Grace walked into my office carrying a newspaper. She placed it on my desk. The headline caught my attention immediately. Parker Designs faces bankruptcy after corruption investigation. I quietly read the article. The board had finally discovered millions of dollars in missing funds. Several investors had withdrawn overnight. The company's stock had collapsed. Daniel had resigned as CEO. Olivia had also stepped down. The company I once built was falling apart, not because of me, but because of the people who had stolen it. Grace looked at me. How do you feel? I closed the newspaper. Nothing. I already cried 3 years ago. That afternoon, our human resources director entered my office. We're hiring for senior project managers. Applications have been pouring in. I smiled.
good.
She handed me a short list. There are 2 candidates I'd like you to review personally. I glanced at the first resume.
Then,
Everything around me seemed to stop. Daniel Carter.
former CEO, Parker Designs.
I slowly turned the page. The second resume belonged to Olivia Parker Carter, my younger sister. Neither of them knew who owned Pinnacle Design Group. Grace looked at my expression. What is it? Without saying a word, I handed her the resumes. She read the names, then looked up in disbelief. They're applying here? I nodded. They have no idea. The following week, interview day arrived. I watched through the security cameras. Daniel looked nothing like the confident man I once married. His expensive suits were gone. His shoulders were slumped. His hair had started turning gray. Olivia looked exhausted. The confidence she once carried had disappeared. Life had been unkind to both of them, not because karma was magical, but because lies never last forever. Grace smiled. They're waiting in conference room B. I stood up. Let's not keep them waiting. As I walked down the hallway, every step echoed through the building. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I simply wanted the truth to meet the people who had run from it. Outside the conference room, I paused for a moment, then opened the door. Daniel looked up first. His face instantly turned white. The folder slipped from his hands. Olivia slowly raised her head. The moment she saw me,
She gasped.
"No," she whispered. "This can't be." I walked into the room, calmly closed the door behind me, and took my seat at the head of the table. Neither of them could speak. I smiled politely. "Good morning. My name is Emma Parker. I'll be conducting your interviews today." The room fell completely silent. 3 years ago, they believed I would never wake up. Now, the woman they had betrayed owned the company they desperately wanted to work for. And this time, I was the one asking the questions. The room was silent. Daniel couldn't take his eyes off me. Olivia looked like she had seen a ghost. For nearly a minute, no one spoke. Finally, Daniel whispered, "Emma, I thought." I calmly interrupted him. "I know what you thought. You thought I'd never wake up." His face dropped. Olivia nervously gripped the edge of her chair. "Emma, please, let us explain." I looked at both of them. "You have exactly 30 minutes. The same amount of time every applicant gets. If you're here for a
Job.
act like professionals." Neither of them moved. Grace entered the room carrying 3 folders. She placed one in front of each of us, then quietly sat beside me. Daniel recognized her immediately. "Grace, I thought you left the industry." She smiled.
No.
I was simply waiting for the truth. I opened Daniel's resume. "You claim to have extensive leadership experience." He nodded. "Yes." I looked directly into his eyes. "So tell me, How does a CEO lose an entire company in less than 3 years? He lowered his head. I made mistakes. Mistakes? I slid a financial report across the table. You transferred company funds into fake consulting firms. You approved unauthorized contracts. You dismissed experienced employees who questioned you. Those aren't mistakes. Those are decisions. Daniel had no answer. I turned toward Olivia. You've listed yourself as an executive operations manager. She forced a weak smile. I learned a lot over the years. I picked up another document. This document says otherwise. It shows you approved payments to companies that never existed. Her hands started shaking. I only signed what Daniel gave me. So now you're blaming him? Tears filled her eyes. I was scared. I looked at her calmly. Were you scared when you stood beside my hospital bed? When you thanked me for my company, my house, and my husband? She burst into tears. I'm sorry. I was jealous. You always had everything. The better grades, the successful business, the perfect life. I hated living in your shadow. I shook my head. You weren't living in my shadow. You were destroying your own future trying to steal mine. Daniel suddenly stood up. Stop blaming Olivia. This was my fault. I manipulated everyone. I lied to your parents. I lied to the board. I lied to myself. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I don't deserve forgiveness.
No.
You don't. He slowly sat back down. The room fell silent again. Then I placed one final folder on the table. Neither of them knew what was inside. This folder contains evidence. Bank records, email archives, board minutes, and traffic camera footage. Both of them froze. Olivia's breathing became heavier. Daniel whispered, "What footage?" I slowly opened the folder. The footage from the night of my accident. Olivia immediately looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at Olivia. Neither of them spoke. Their silence said more than any confession ever could. I closed the folder. I've already shared copies with my legal team. And with the police. Daniel's face turned completely pale. Olivia covered her mouth. You called the police? I stood up.
No.
I simply told the truth. A security officer knocked on the conference room door. Miss Parker, they're here. I nodded. Please send them in. The door slowly opened. 2 detectives walked into the room. One of them looked directly at Daniel and Olivia. We need both of you to come with us for questioning regarding financial fraud. He paused for a moment, then continued, and the reopening of Emma Parker's accident investigation. Daniel closed his eyes. Olivia began crying uncontrollably. 3 years ago, they believed they had buried the truth forever. They were wrong, because the truth had finally caught up with them. The detectives escorted Daniel and Olivia out of the conference room. Neither of them resisted. Neither of them spoke. For the first time in years, they had nothing left to hide behind. As the elevator doors closed, I quietly looked away. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't celebrating. Justice and revenge were not the same thing. Over the next several months, the investigation uncovered everything. Forensic accountants traced millions of dollars that had disappeared from Parker Designs. Fake companies, forged signatures, hidden bank accounts. Every transaction led back to Daniel and Olivia. Then came the biggest discovery. The traffic camera footage Grace had found matched records from the rental company. Olivia had rented the black SUV. Phone records showed she and Daniel had spoken dozens of times on the day of the crash. However, the investigators couldn't prove they had intended to kill me. The evidence showed financial fraud beyond doubt, but the collision itself couldn't be proven to be a deliberate attack. In court, they were convicted of multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and financial crimes. Both received prison sentences. The judge also ordered them to repay millions of dollars to Parker Designs and its investors. Watching the verdict, I didn't feel victorious. I simply felt
free.
A few weeks later, the board of Parker Designs contacted me. They wanted to meet. When I arrived, every board member stood up. The chairman spoke first. We failed you. We trusted the wrong people. We should have protected the company you built. He placed a folder on the table. We would like to return your ownership. I looked at the documents. 3 years ago, I would have signed them without hesitation. Instead, I gently pushed them back. I'm honored, but my future is no longer here. The room fell silent. My company, Pinnacle Design Group, is my home now. And I won't abandon the people who believed in me when no one else did. The board members nodded with respect. For the first time, they understood that success isn't measured by what you reclaim, but by what you create. 6 months later, Pinnacle Design Group became the country's largest privately owned architecture firm. We expanded internationally, opened offices in London, Toronto, and Singapore. Grace became Chief Operating Officer. Dr. Nathan Reed joined our charitable foundation. Together, we launched a rehabilitation program for coma patients and their families. No one facing the same journey would ever feel forgotten again. One quiet Sunday afternoon, I visited my parents. They had aged far more than the years suggested. My mother hugged me tightly. I'm sorry we didn't question everything. We thought we were protecting the family. My father lowered his head. I should have trusted my daughter. I smiled softly. We can't change the past, but we can choose what kind of family we become from today. For the first time in years, we shared dinner together. No arguments, no business, just honesty. A year later, I stood on the stage at an international business conference. Someone in the audience asked, "What gave you the strength to start over after losing everything?" I smiled. I didn't start over because I was fearless. I started over because staying broken would have given my pain the final word. The audience applauded. As I walked off the stage, I noticed a young woman waiting backstage. She looked nervous. "I just wanted to thank you," she said. "My husband betrayed me. I thought my life was over. But after hearing your story, I've decided to begin again." I smiled. "Then you've already taken the hardest step." She hugged me before leaving. In that moment, I realized my greatest achievement wasn't building a billion-dollar company. It wasn't exposing the people who betrayed me. It was proving that no betrayal, no loss, and no tragedy has the power to define your future unless you let it. As I looked out over the city skyline, I whispered to myself, they took 3 years of my life, but they never took my future. And that made all the difference.